Hello everyone. I just want to welcome you to another one of the webinars from Little Giant Steps. I'm glad you're able to make this. We're very excited to share with you the information that we've gleaned over the last 20 years in working in the field of neurodevelopment. So we're going to get started with the PowerPoint here. So I'm going to take just a second to get my screen up here so you can see it.
Screen sharing has started.
All right. So the name of our company is Little Giant Steps, and we're going to be talking tonight about what I believe a cornerstone of brain development, and that's having to do with processing. So we're going to do just a little bit of review of what we've been over in the past times, just a real short to bring everybody up to speed in case you've missed the other two. But first, you know, as a mother, many of you are mothers obviously because that's why you're here, about your children. One of the best things about being a mother, which I am, is being a grandmother. Now, this is my little granddaughter, Kenzie. She's 9 months old, and we're very proud of her and excited that she's part of our family. And I never really realized the grandmother thing with the pictures and everything until I became a grandmother, so you just have to bear with me. It's something grandmothers do. They show pictures of their grandchildren. And of course mine's the cutest one, so anyway, there she is. The first time we talked about how curriculum, it's the dressing on the house. It's like after the house is built, then you bring in all the fun things that make it pretty. But without a firm foundation, it's not going to work too well. And the same thing is happening with our brain. We have to have a good foundation of neural pathways in our brain so that that foundation is laid for learning to take place. So we ask questions like, why is my child so disorganized? Why does it take him so long to do everything? Or why do I feel so scattered and my keys keep disappearing? Sometimes we ask those things of ourselves, not just our children. Now this time we're going to add a few of these questions. Why are my children struggling with schoolwork and in life in general? Why can't they remember what they hear or what they've read? Why can't they follow directions or remember to do the chores or brush their teeth? You may be asking some of these questions, and you may ask yourself this question: is this rebellion? Well, I think maybe not. It could be just development, that they don't have the processing ability to be able to do these things that you want them to do. We call it a very shaky foundation. When your processing isn't good, then everything kind of implodes because you can't function well without a good foundation. We're going to talk about how to build that good foundation tonight. And the good news is it's never too late. We can unlock your child's fullest potential, and even you if you need some help in this area. We call it taking little neurodevelopmental steps to get giant strides in academic and functional ability. We talked briefly about 3 keys to learning, and I want to encourage you, if you don't know about these, to go back and get the link to that first video webinar that we did. And we talked about frequency, intensity, and duration. Frequency being how many times someone hears or sees something. Intensity is how strong that information comes in and how interesting a lot of times adds to the intensity. And the duration, short periods of time and then over a period of time. Some of you may even remember, if you were on the previous ones, what this flag is. We'll just check your memory here. Yeah, it's Chad. All right, then we talked about the foundation that has to be laid for academics to be really good, and part of that is brain organization. We talked about how that happens in the early years, like at Kenzie's age, where she's creeping and crawling, and we're going to talk more in depth about that and many more things that you can do with your infants and preschoolers to build this foundation early so that school is just a breeze for them later on. That's going to be next Thursday on the 28th. And if you can't make that, we'll have the recording that you can get the recording of that. Lots of information for those foundational years, infants to preschool. Now, we also talked about receiving information last time, and unfortunately that that recording did not we had some technical difficulties. So we are going to be re-recording that, and we'll send out a link for that. But we talked about receiving, and just briefly, we talked about you need to be able to receive information through all your senses and efficiently. There's some things that are better addressed visually, like a sunset. You can only appreciate that if you can see it. And then the math processes or the concepts of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Those are visually, better come in visually. And then the math facts, they're better auditorily. So we bring those in through the auditory system. There's some things that you can only really learn well with your tactile system by touching it, like cutting hair. And we also talked about if the information coming in through the senses is distorted, if it's hypersensitive, it sends messages to the brain that this is pain, and it takes your focus away and causes all kinds of problems with the foundation. The processing is the foundational part we're going to talk about tonight, so I'm not going to really go into that now. But the other thing that we talked about is storing information. Where does that information go once you have taught it to them and it goes into their long-term memory? What we talked about here is how important the dominance is. Starting with the hand, that's where your dominance is first established, and that guides everything else. Okay. The dominance starts with your hand, and then because the right side of your body is controlled by the left hemisphere of your brain, then you store everything in one place if you're dominant with your right eye, right ear, right foot, and your right hand. Or if you're left-handed, you would be, the ideal thing would be left-eyed, left-eared, and left-footed. So we're going to re-record this, like I said, the learning struggles when the foundation needs repair. So we'll go over all of that in detail, and you can get that in the next week or so. So we're going to talk about processing. That's our main focus tonight. And processing is your short-term memory. It's kind of like the RAM on your computer, how it goes into short-term memory before you hit the save button. And we have both auditory and visual short-term memory. So we're going to be talking about each one of those, helping you understand the importance of it and what to do to improve it. I call auditory processing the best kept secret in education because not many people really know about it unless it's really severe, and it affects our whole society and our whole culture. We used to be a very auditory society. We talked with each other a lot. We ate 3 meals together and talked. We read to each other for long periods of time, and we listened to radio broadcasts. But now, that's really not the case. The goals in life that we have are tied into this processing ability. We want you to be able to, we want everyone to be able to follow directions, because that helps them in school and in life in general, stay on task, be able to follow a conversation, stay on a subject when they're talking to someone, act age appropriate, comprehend what they hear and what they read, pull pieces of math word problems together, be able to use phonics because that's an excellent way to teach reading, We want them to understand the big picture and the consequences about things. So those are all important goals in life, and they depend on the foundation. Now, years ago, in the 1700s, when our country first was formed, we had a 14-year-old that had such good processing and such good education that he was able to go across the ocean by himself to be a representative, an ambassador to the United States over in Europe. This was John Adams. And so I can't really imagine 14-year-olds these days being able to do that kind of thing. So that's a huge difference in the cultures that were very auditory, and now we've become very visual. You know what the kids are doing all day. They're doing a lot of visual things with their phones, with the computers, with the videos and the video games and movies. All of those kind of things are very visual. Now you might say, well, isn't that auditory too? Well, let me ask you to do a little experiment. Have them watch their favorite movie and turn the sound off, and see what happens there. They really kind of get the whole picture with the visual, and they don't mind the sound being off. All right, you know, we used to have long car trips that we took as well, and the kids would talk with the parents and talk with each other and that kind of thing. Much more auditory, but now what they're doing is watching. And what I've seen is the whole society coming down in their auditory processing ability, and it's making the foundation where it doesn't work too well. All right, this is something that I found. It's a book called It's the Social Animal by David Brooks, and he said we've gone away from being an auditory society. He has a chapter there on keys to raising successful kids, and I guess he agrees with me because auditory is vital to raising successful kids. He said that a typical middle-class home, the children hear spoken 480 words an hour, and in a lower working class, they only hear 180 words an hour. That's a difference of 32 million fewer words over the course of their childhood. He said that it puts you at a disadvantage with less verbal facilities. Now, I think that's just the tip of the iceberg, but it's nice to have confirmation from other people what you know is true. You know, I have seen that this is being affected by this generation so much that people gather together are not even talking with each other. They've all got their heads down and they're doing something on their phone, even though they're there together. It's pretty rampant. Now, we believe that the auditory processing is a huge factor in neurological efficiency. It's really the difference in dial-up internet and high speed. There's a huge difference there. I don't know how many of you listening have experienced that, but I definitely have. It also causes many of the symptoms that are on the ADD and ADHD checklist. So from my perspective, we have a lot of people that are labeled with what many people think is a disease or a syndrome or something really terrible, when many of those things it's really just a list of symptoms, and many of those things that are on that list are directly caused by low auditory processing. So I want you to participate with me right now. So I want you to get a piece of paper and a pen. You may already have that since you're taking notes. And I want you to do a little listening activity with me. What I'm going to do is call out a number of numbers to you, and I want you to listen to all the numbers before you write anything. So you're going to listen and then hold that information and then write it down on your piece of paper. All right? So here we go. This is the first one. 8, 2, 9, 1. Write that down. Okay, let's try this one. 6, 3, 5, 7, 4. Write that down. Next. 9, 1, 8, 2, 0, 3. Okay, the next one. 6, 0, 7, 5, 2, 9, 4. Okay, it's this time in a lot of speaking engagements that I do that I see a lot of worried looks in the audience. Can't see you right now, but let's try one more, all right? 5, 3, 6, 2, 7, 1, 0, 9. Go ahead and write that down. Now, if we were in an audience together, I would be asking you how you feel or how you felt when the numbers got too long. So I want you to just write a couple of things down, and maybe you could put that in the chat or just write it down on your piece of paper, how you felt when the numbers got too long. Many times what I hear is kind of fear, anger, what's happening, stress, anxiety, all kinds of negative feelings. Where'd those numbers go? What just happened? Why can't I remember that? All of those kind of things are what often happens to your children and your students. That's how they feel all the time if they have this low auditory processing. So this is going to really help you see your children differently. So let's look at the global effects of auditory processing. First of all, it affects the children's behavior. They tend to get angry easier. They play with younger children. They don't act their age. And they often have meltdowns as well when their processing is low. They can't figure out the world too easily. They have trouble with comprehension. They can't remember what you've told them. If you're reading to them, they can't remember what they've read, holding those pieces together, and that affects a lot of their schoolwork. They have trouble following directions. This is something you may have a lot of experience with yourself. You've told your child, go upstairs, get your shoes and socks, and come back down. We've got to go. And so you're getting everything else ready and moving around, and now you're ready, and you've been waiting a while, and now you're angry, and you're going up the stairs, and you say to them, what are you doing, and why aren't you minding? And they look at you with this deer in the headlight look, and they like, was I supposed to be doing something? And you are fit to be tied because what do you mean? Were you supposed to be doing something? I told you what to do. Well, they were upstairs, right? They might even have their shoes and socks on. After that, those instructions sounded like this: wah, 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 wah. And they didn't get any of the rest of that. So there's no way they could comply. So it really was a developmental issue, not a behavioral issue in this instance. Conceptual thinking. This is the big picture, getting the big picture together and understanding the pieces of the world. So this is really important to hold all those conceptual ideas together. It also affects their ability to hold a conversation. You know, this is a child that they may interrupt during a conversation because if I don't tell you right now, I'll forget. Or they might just change the subject abruptly in the middle because they couldn't follow the conversation and they had something they wanted to say, so out it came. So this can cause a lot of problems with peers. Oftentimes they're very socially immature in this situation, and the peers don't quite understand what's going on with them. But it's really just low processing. They have trouble attending, staying on task. These are the kids that are always daydreaming, thinking of something else. You leave them for 5 or 10 minutes and they're making castles with fuzz off the carpet. You know, they just can't seem to stay on task. Then it also affects phonetic utilization. Phonics is really an auditory approach. You hold all the pieces together and then you're able to get that back out. You hold those sounds together and then the rule, and then you're able to read the word if you're taught with a phonics approach. Well, sometimes if your processing is low, it's a very frustrating experience. So if your child is struggling with phonics and can't learn to read that way, then you want to change your approach, work on their processing, and bring the phonics back in. Then they'll have the best of both worlds. Here's the significance of processing. A 1-year-old should be able to do one piece. You teach them to say, to wave bye-bye, and you say bye-bye, and then they wave without you doing the visual. Then that's one piece of information. If there are 2, they should be able to do 2 pieces. You could say, blow a kiss and touch your nose, and that would be 2 pieces. A 3-year-old should be able to do 3. With a 3-year-old, you could do something like car, boat, train, and then they say car, boat, train right after you. That's 3 pieces of information. Now, we found that children typically potty train quicker if their processing is up. They need at least a 3-digit span to potty train well. So this might save you a lot of money on diapers if you get their processing up early and then they'll potty train. So there's lots of benefits to auditory processing. The 4-year-old can do 4 pieces. Now they might do words or they might do numbers like I gave you earlier. The first one I gave you had 4 in it, and so they should be able to do 4. Now I want to tell you a little story about Mercy. Mercy was one of 5 children, and she had a lot of issues going on. She was the drama queen at her house. She had 4 or 5 meltdowns a day and was getting a lot of negative attention from her mom, who had other children to tend to too. But we worked with Mercy, and she was diligent to work on the processing just a couple of minutes twice a day, and it was amazing what happened with her. Now I've been privileged to know her over the years, and she is a manager of a fast food restaurant at 19, and married, and become very, very mature and responsible. So there's hope for those kiddos that you're struggling with, or that they are struggling. Now, here's another more significance. A 5-year-old should be able to do at least 5 pieces of information. A 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, or anyone older than 7, up to an adult, should be able to do at least 7. Now, that's the statistics that were not too long ago, but I think our society is getting closer to 6. And 6 is what a 6-year-old does. You can imagine if we have a lot of people running around that are developmentally 6, but they're adults. So there's a lot of things that are happening with husbands and wives, children and their parents, with employers and employees that is very negative. Well, I have a good story to tell you about Mercy's sister, Angela. Angela also worked on a neurodevelopmental program. She didn't have any issues like Mercy did. The mom just wanted her to have all the benefits of brain development. So she worked on that processing and got it up to like 8 and 9. And she was able at 12 years old to work for me in a branch where I go out of town. I work with children with learning challenges as my vocation. I do these webinars and get the word out to people for a avocation. Now she was able to take money, talk to parents, give them, reschedule, give them pertinent information about getting their program on a website, run a credit card machine, all of this at age 12. So it's really very important to know about this and to do something about it. Now, if you've watched any of my webinars or seen me speak anywhere else, you know that I'm a proponent of this, and I give these free test kits out so that you can find out where your children are and then what to do about getting their processing higher. My only concern about giving these to you and making it so easy is you won't really realize what you have in your hand. This can be life-changing. The difference in an immature, self-centered Mercy who did not conceptually understand the world around her to the mature and able sister, Angela, that was able to function at a much higher level. So let's see how you did. This is the answers to the ones that I gave you earlier. Just take your paper and check and see how many you got correct. If you got all the numbers and they're not in the right order, that's not a correct response. So, since you're an adult, you should have been able to do at least the D level. So if you missed anything other than that, then you want to work on your processing too. Now, when you give this test to your child, I don't know for sure if you realized it or not, but I was doing these numbers at a particular pace. And this is very important. If you go too fast or too slow, you will skew your score. So when you give these out, you want to say them in a monotone voice, saying 1,000 to yourself between each one. So after you give this digit span test to your children that are 4 years old or older, you'll know more about them and why they're acting the way they're acting. Now, if you have younger children, you can get on our website and get the Tiny Tot test kit, which is for 3 and under, and test your little ones too. It's never too early to start processing, working on processing. We're doing that with Kinsey right now at 9 months old. So if you got all of them, then you're actually functioning at a superior level if you didn't do one of these two things. Now, I don't tell you this ahead of time because then you just want to think about that. It's kind of like, don't think about an elephant and then that's all you can think about because somebody just told you not to. So if you didn't chain the numbers together, which would be like 8, 8-2, 8-2-9, 8-2-9-1, if you didn't chain them like that, then you got a legitimate score. Or if you didn't look up like on an imaginary blackboard and visualize those numbers, a lot of people do that because they're very strong visually. That is a visual way of compensating for low processing. So when you see your children and you work with them, if you see them looking up, you just tell them, just listen to this, and you'll see that eye gaze come down. And it's very interesting. The body language will show you what's happening in the brain. And if you see their mouths moving, then you probably know they're chaining and you want to stop them from doing that. Just holding each piece of information together. I've had some people at my seminars and stuff say, well, how do you do that? Well, it's with practice. That's how you do it. Just a reminder, you need at least a 5-digit span working on 6 to handle phonics. But let's say you have a 9, 8, or 7-year-old and they need to be reading, but they're not reading well and they're not doing well with phonics. What do? Well, you're going to work on the processing to get that up, but in the meantime, you can work on a visual approach. I want you to read this right quick and see what I mean about we are visual readers. Now, isn't that amazing that we can actually read that and the letters are all mixed up? And we thought spelling was so important. It is important to be able to spell, but our brain, as soon as we know a word, we just read it. We don't ever sound it out again. Phonics is excellent to be able to sound out words that we don't know, figure out those kind of words, and it's an excellent approach, but it's only excellent when the processing is up. So there's something that you can do besides just working on words, and this is one way that you can work on sight words. It's called echo reading. With this approach, you're going to go with the ability of the child. So if the child is reading fairly well, you might read a page or a paragraph. But if they're struggling, then you just read a paragraph or a couple of sentences. And if they're really just beginning to learn to read, then you read one sentence and they read the same sentence right after you. So echo reading is you read a portion, they read the same portion. It's not you read one paragraph, they read the next. It's the same thing that you read. Remember, the input that we talked about at the first webinar is very important. And this is not cheating. This is giving the child input that they need to be successful. So you read, they read the same thing. You read, they read the same thing. It's very effective. And for older children that are struggling with reading, this is sometimes just the thing that turns them around, because sometimes they're convinced they can't read at all, and this opens up a whole new world to them and unlocks that brain that said, I can't read. There's something that we created for early readers that is very, very helpful in the comprehension, and it's really easy. It can start with a very low level, even 5-year-olds or 9-year-olds that are struggling. It's called detailed reading comprehension, and what you do, there's 3 different levels, and each level has about 20, 22 words that they learn with a flash method. Then they read a sentence, put a red 0 inside the little truck, and they look over to a response card and they mark on this card that's laminated whatever it said. So you'll see that they have to hold 5 different pieces of information. What kind of thing was it? Was it in, under, above? We teach all the different concepts of words during this. But they can read 300 sentences at each level with just knowing those 20 words. So it's like this. Put a green minus over the big bus. You see they have to remember what color, what symbol they're going to use. Is it over, under? Was it the big bus or the little bus? Or was it big or little? And then what was the object they were supposed to look for? Then they do the response. So that's called detailed reading comprehension. We even have a junior level of this that's included that they can start with at a much lower level and just look for maybe one thing that changes. If you have a very young child or a beginning reader or somebody that's struggling. The other thing you might consider is 1,000 words. These are cards that are already printed and put in order for you from the first 100 to the second 100, all the way through 1,000 most commonly read words. And you use a flash method that is taught in there to teach those words. Remember, it's great to have a good sight word vocabulary, work on the processing, and bring that back up and then use phonics. So you may be wondering, when I do this test on my child and find out where they're processing, what do I do when I find out there's poor auditory processing ability? Well, we have several different options for you. There's a book that I wrote, What Every Parent Needs to Know about Auditory Processing, the best kept secret in education is what I call it too. And that book will give you the whys and the wherefores, and also different games that you can play. And if your child is struggling from going from one digit to the next, which is like a year of improvement, you would have a bridge technique that we teach in there. Also some games, auditory games for younger children. So the book is available for help in understanding and what to do about processing. We also have decks of cards that are called digit cards, and there's different series of numbers on the cards. There's about 125 in the deck, and what you do is twice a day for 2 minutes you're going to call out numbers to them, one above where they tested. So you're working at stretching their ability to process by giving them more, but it's very challenging. So you might have to give it to them twice or even 3 times before they get it. So that's one thing that you can use. And then there's a computer program called Sequencing in a Flash, and that's something they just get on the computer, and the computer calls out the numbers to them, and then they type them into the computer, and it'll tell them whether they're correct or not. There's also other ways to work on processing, because processing is practicing listening. So you can read to your child long periods of time, and when you are not able to take the time to read to them, then they can listen to their iPod or a CD player with stories on it. We have a really cute one that we carry, a great story with all kinds of wonderful sound effects, called Axel Glinch. So you might want to check that out. When you work on the processing twice a day for 2 minutes, that's a 4-minute investment you're making in your child's future. All kinds of wonderful things happen. Their speech patterns improve, their reasoning skills improve, they understand cause and effect, that ability is enhanced, their social skills improve, and you will just see a more confident child emerging. So I want to really encourage you about auditory processing. Now we're going to go on to visual processing. Visual sequential processing is holding the pieces of visual information together. I forgot to tell you, we are going to do some question and answers at the end in just a few minutes. So if you have any questions, just type them into the chat and someone will get those to me at the end, and I'll be able to answer your questions. Sorry, I forgot to tell you that. The thing that we use is a visual digit span test to measure for visual processing. And I want you to go ahead and take that test while we're here. So get that piece of paper and pencil back out, and I'm going to show you some numbers for a few seconds, and then you write them down after they're gone. Don't write anything down until it's gone, because that would be cheating. Okay? So get ready. Here we go. Okay, write that down. Okay, next. Now write that down. Okay, write the next one down. I think we only have one more. Ready? Okay, well that was a really big one. Give you a second to write that down. Or not. Again, when it gets too high, there's a lot of anxiety about trying to capture all that information. But when your processing's good, then life's good. Visual processing is your visual short-term memory. If a preschooler has trouble with this skill, they're going to have trouble with numbers, letters, and remembering words. If an older child has problems with this, they're going to have trouble with math, spelling, reading, visual attention, picking up visual information, and eye contact. So there's a lot of things involved in this skill. So I'll go ahead and let you see how you did. Check and see how you did. We started with 5, then 6, and then 7. So the third one down, you should be able to do, an adult should be able to do. So this is the same with auditory processing. 5-year-olds for 5 for a 5-year-old, 6 for a 6, 7 or above for an adult. And a rare person would be able to do 10, and those people tend to be doctors and lawyers in high professions. Now on the littlegiantsteps.com, we have free processing kits for visual as well as auditory. So while you're in there on the store, you just put 00 in the price and we'll just send that to you. So I encourage you to get that, test all the people in your family, and you can start working on it. You can work on it the same way with the digit span cards by holding them up for 3-second exposure and then taking it away and seeing if they can tell you what they saw. Again, you're going to do one above where they tested, so you can show it the same sequence to them several different times until they get it. Or that sequencing in a flash program that you looked at earlier, that also does visual as well as auditory. So they can go in and do a couple of minutes of visual, a couple of minutes of auditory twice a day and start improving this. Usually it takes about 3 to 4 months to go up one. Or you can get a visual flash, which is a higher level of ability where only one number comes up at a time, and then you have to say all the sequence. So it's definitely more challenging to do the visual flash. We're winding down here, so we're going to be taking questions, so be sure to put those in the chat. I want you to know there's more resources that you can utilize. We do have an indie DVD that gives you lots of information about the neurodevelopmental approach, what to check for, what to do about what you find with your children, or just how to start them out at a good place. We also sent out some coupons for Rapid Recall, which is the program that teaches the math facts just in 7 minutes a day. It's all based on frequency, intensity, and duration, and we're seeing amazing things with that. So there's a coupon that you can either request, or it will go out with the recording in case you want to come back and view this again. And then we also have a coupon on developmental foundations. That's something that I talked with you about last time, but it didn't get recorded. So this can also go out with the confirmation of the invitation to the next one. or you can request that at littlegiantsteps.com, or you can send it to office@littlegiantsteps.com, and we'll get that out to you. Don't forget to get your auditory and visual test kits. We want you to have that resource, and again, it will tell you some things to do about it if you've forgotten what I said here. I'm really glad that you were able to hear about this, what I call the best kept secret in education, because I really believe it's affecting our whole culture and pulling us down, keeping us from our full potential. So I'm going to take the screen down now. There we go. All right, CJ, do you have some questions for me? It's interesting, I'm just reading some of the chat here while we're waiting. People felt a little anxious, they felt tense, panic, please slow down, that kind of thing. Some people said, you lost me at 7, but that's pretty good. 8 is superior. Okay, one of the questions is, my child reads several grade levels above his grade, and he is progressing quickly and very well in math. However, he has trouble following directions and staying on task. Okay, if the child is doing well with processing or not being able to follow directions, you really want to make sure that he's not chaining. And the way to do that is to call out the number, and then he tells you the number that you just said, and then you say the next number, he says the next number. That way they can't really chain in between. Okay, and there's a question about regular curriculum. I have many stories about people that have taken time out of what they consider the traditional curriculum and worked on the neurodevelopmental approach. There was one that the lady wanted the child to write, do a lot of creative writing. And my suggestion was to wait until his processing was higher and his brain was more organized. Well, she reluctantly did that, and she was able to, yeah, I can hear you now, CJ. She was able to hang in there and get his foundation really well developed. And then a few months later, she emailed me and she said, he's writing books. So I just want to encourage you, if you're doing these things to build a foundation, there will be no stopping the child, and they will not get behind in their academics. They will just be soaring.
It says, my husband is an accomplished virtual artist, high-level talent, and above-average capability. He cannot remember numbers to save his life. He is extremely ADD. How can I help him? My 3 sons are like him. I'm going nuts here.
Experiencing and practicing listening at a higher level. A lot of people that are very creative, they may be mixed dominant. That causes them to be a little disorganized, but the ADD part of it is definitely auditory processing. So if you just work on that with him, it's never too late to develop that, or let him do something on the computer like I was talking about, and he would be able to develop that. With the kids, you have much more control over that situation, and you just practice with them twice a day for 2 minutes, and make it a fun thing, make some kind of reward. It usually goes up about a half to 1 digit every 3 to 4 months. So you want to have some milestones along the way, that some kind of incentive. If they're really trying, then they get to go and do something that they really like to do. Because it does get a little bit tedious sometimes to work on that, but the rewards are amazing.
Marlene is working on an indie program and she's including the auditory processing activities for 18 months now. They've been stuck with her son to retain 6 words for almost a year now. So do you have any suggestions on how to help him get beyond this plateau that he seems to be stuck at?
Well, I would suggest that she talk to her neurodevelopmentalist for specifics. It does get to be very difficult to go from a 6 to a 7, but just lots of listening to stories on recorded stories, and as many different kinds of processing activities as you can get in there. Sometimes even mixing those up in the same session, like you might do numbers, do one set of numbers and then numbers and letters, just so that it's totally different, and then give words after that in the same 2-minute session. You might try that.
Lori has a question regarding her 5-year-old daughter. She said she's kind of new at this, but her daughter reads very well and is doing well with all our curriculum. But when she speaks, a lot of times she has trouble getting out what she's trying to say. Is this normal for her age?
It can have to do with processing, which that's going to be a real clue once you test her to find out where she is. And if it's low, if she's 5, she ought to be able to do at least 5, working on 6. And then the other thing that can affect that inconsistent recall or the trouble remembering words that you want to say is the dominance. So you want to look at, she's right in the time of developing dominance. You want to make sure that there's nothing in the family line that's left-handed. Basically, the parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, or first cousins, brothers and sisters, of course. And if there's that kind of thing, genetics that could be left, then you want to seriously look at that possibility, or the development of the eye and ear dominance.
Libby out of Michigan is wanting your opinion. What do you think of CD programs like APD, like hemispheric specific auditory stimulation for her 6-year-old to do?
Well, I think you really want to be careful about, I'm assuming that it's music, and you do want to be careful about that, because there's a lot of people out there that are doing things to music that cause different things to happen in your brain that are not really good. Some people even tout out-of-body experiences and altered states of consciousness and that kind of thing. So you want to be careful and just work with somebody that you know and trust with something like that.
Okay, Karen out of Houston says you've suggested listening to books on audio. Does it matter what type of stories? For instance, my kids love Adventures in Odyssey story of the World, read by Jim Weiss, as well as historical fiction books. Also, does it need to be listened to with earphones, or is riding in the car and all of us enjoying the story work as well?
Okay, well, that's a really good question. All of those that you listed for them to listen to are really good. In fact, Focus in the Family has a new Odyssey story, from what I understand, on their website every day. The most ideal thing to work on processing and reinforce their dominance is to have the earphone going into their dominant ear. So they would just wear one earphone. But when you're in the car, everybody should be enjoying that as well. But as often as possible, that direct into the dominant ear is very beneficial. I think we have time for 1, maybe 2 more questions.
We have one more here. Becky out of Lumberton, Texas says, my audiologist said I need to buy my son a processor, and this will instantly cure auditory processing disorder. She said these are used in public schools. What do you think of this method, and why does the LGS method take a completely different approach.
I'm not as familiar with that. I would love to have a magic magic pill. I've not found that to be something that is something that I've seen work. What we do is the practice, which is the I guess you would just call it the foundational ability to hold on to pieces of information that only comes by practice. So I'd love for you to send me information about that. I'll check into it.
My daughter is in junior high. Yes, Donnell out of Frisco. My daughter is in junior high and has been experiencing difficulty with comprehension for a couple of years now. Is it possible that we missed an auditory processing issue? She is extremely visual at this time.
Well, I think it's something that's rampant across our culture, especially the younger kids, as they're doing more and more visual all the time from a younger and younger age. So that's why I would encourage everyone to get that auditory test kit, find out where your children are, and you saw and you heard some of the things that happen when your processing is low, where it makes you feel anxious and all of those kind of things. And again, with retaining information, I would look at the dominance issue, because that can be pretty huge. And those two combined can cause a lot of problems.
That does us with our questions for this evening.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. It was great to be able to share with you. And let us know if we can help you with anything else or you have questions along the way.